Thank you very much, Sanjan. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction, for your great leadership at Conservation International, for all the years of work you've done with the Clinton Global Initiative, including coming to talk to our university students last October. I want to thank the Santo Domingo family, all of them, for supporting this project. And I was back there, like, where are you? I was back there listening to you speak, and I thought, this is a good thing. The older I get, the more I want to see younger people taking up the mantle of responsibility. I want to thank President Grimson. He and his beautiful wife who are here were great friends to Hillary and me when we served together. And I love Iceland for many reasons. The most appropriate one tonight, of course, is that they have the highest reliance on geothermal energy in the world. And I want to thank Ambassador Figueres, who has just labored in this vineyard for so long and so well, and whose country continues to inspire us all. They had 300 days, more than 300 days in the last year, where all their electricity came from green sources. And so I'd also like to say that I really don't think former presidents should ever get awards, but I'm proud of this one because I care so much about it, and because it gives me a chance to say that sometimes the people in charge, when something good happens, get too much credit. And what happened in the 8 years I had the honor to serve is that we had an astonishing team led by Vice President Gore, Bruce Babbitt, I think one of the greatest Interior Secretaries in the history of the United States, Carol Browner, who made sure 43 million more Americans were breathing clean air when we left office than when we took office, Warren Christopher and Madeleine Albright at State, John Podesta, Katie McGinney, and many others in the White House. So I want to thank them. I also want to say that I have two pictures in my home office, which is an old converted barn next to the farmhouse where Hillary and I live. It's well over 100 years old. One picture is of a bear with blood on his paws in the Tongass rainforest, the last temperate rainforest on planet Earth. And the other is a picture of a cypress swamp in my native state, where it was thought, at least for several months, that the rarest bird in America, the ivory-billed woodpecker, had been sighted a couple of years ago. That swamp was protected under a land bank I set up in 1979. I used to joke with Al Gore that I had been a tree hugger longer than he had. I was proud that we saved the Yellowstone from mining and brought the wolves back. Proud that we added 1 million acres to the Grand Canyon. Proud of all those things that were mentioned. And like you, I was, at least I assume you were, I was somewhere between mystified and heartbroken when the Grand Staircase Escalante was cut in half and Bear Paw next door was cut by a great deal by yesterday's at least announced order. And I thought it was interesting because it was done in the name of economic growth. Now, when I did that, it was not a free decision. There was one Democrat in Congress in the Intermountain West, Bill Orton from Utah, and he lost his seat because I protected Grand Staircase Escalante. But within 5 years, every time I met somebody from Utah, they started saying, you were right, we were wrong, we have more jobs, more economic activity, we're preserving our heritage, we're overrun with eco-tourists, and we don't have those coal trucks going back and forth across those precious beds 24 hours a day. So I think this is the wrong economic decision. I know it's the wrong environmental decision. I think it's the wrong cultural decision. I mean, this is supposed to be a time in which we honor the native-born over immigrants. The only true native-born Americans are the tribal people who live in the area protected, who all oppose this. Otherwise, I don't have strong feelings about that. I think we should be adding more areas. But even more important, I think we should be doing what you are all trying to do now. We need to integrate our commitment to fight climate change, our commitment to sustainable development, our commitment to species preservation into the everyday fabric of organized life everywhere on the planet. After the horrible storms in the Caribbean, Prime Minister Scarrett of Dominica said at the UN General Assembly, after his country was virtually destroyed by hurricanes Irma and Maria, to deny climate change is to deny truth we have just lived. So I'm looking forward to doing what I can, along with the other living former presidents. We have raised the fund to try to help, and we're trying to put several $1 million there, but I want to work for the next however many years I've got the steam to try to help Puerto Rico and the American Virgin Islands and Dominica especially build back in a sustainable way. We did that in the lower Ninth Ward in New Orleans, and everybody said it was a fool errand when we built the houses up and sunk the pilings down and used more environmentally friendly materials and designs. But a few years after that, a single working mother from the lower Ninth Ward and her 13-year-old son came to the Clinton Global Initiative after the hottest month at the time ever recorded in Louisiana, and said she'd paid a $27 electric bill because of the design of the house. So one of the things that I look forward to doing is seeing how we can continue to integrate the need for large-scale conservation projects. Thanks to the Rockefeller Foundation and the government of Norway, we had a chance in our foundation to work on them in Indonesia, Tanzania, Kenya, and a particularly amazing one in Guyana. But I want to do that and reorganize daily life so that we live our verbal commitment to sustainable development. Now, I know the United States is the only country in the world to have rejected the Paris Agreement. That's unbelievable. But anyway, and I know you just had this order on Grand Staircase Escalante. This is the only political thing I'm going to say tonight. Elections have consequences. People who play with them do so at their peril. And we are in the midst of integrating a revolution in information technology with a revolution in how we work and live. It's nowhere near played out. We have no idea what the end result of artificial intelligence and robotics and nanotechnology will be. But right now, you have a lot of people who had once a traditional view of what the role of journalism was, which was to look at the facts, analyze them, and present them to people, who are now struggling just to make a living. Newspaper after newspaper after newspaper cannot stay afloat without online advertising. Traditional newspaper ad revenue dropped from $88 billion to $18 billion in the last 10 years. Now you think about that. You might think as an environmentalist, that's a good thing, less paper, fewer trees being cut down. But what it means is they have to stay afloat by selling online ads, the number and price of which is determined today overwhelmingly by two things. One is, how many retweets do you get? Two is, do you get your story, if you're a big national paper, on the evening news? Or if you're just a big paper in a given state or region, do you get it on those news channels? So the pressures on people to produce things that have a lot of bite, even if there's no substance, are staggering. This too will affect our ability to preserve the environment. Witness the decision. The pressure not to cover things that don't make somebody want to pick up a stick and hit somebody else over the head because they don't get retweets is enormous, which makes it harder for anybody in any sort of electoral atmosphere to stand around and actually talk about how many acres do we really need in Red Rocks to preserve. What do the native tribes think? In other words, these are complex decisions with a lot of moving parts in which scientific inquiry needs to be a part, none of which excites people like tweet or Snapchat or whatever. And yet, you're all here because you know it's the right thing to do. So one of the great challenges as citizens we have is to integrate the things you know and feel and believe tonight into the fabric of our, not just how you vote or whether you vote, but into the fabric of our discourse. Because every survey shows that a majority of the people, indeed a substantial one, agrees with most of what you're here to support. And not just in the United States, but around the world. The problem is, you're sitting here nice, taking a deep breath, having a good time, and we live in a time when the most valuable commodity is apparently having people all torn up and upset and looking for someone to decapitate. So we've got to somehow keep trying. So my message tonight is, in spite of all this stuff that makes you worried, you're winning. If you look at the trend lines instead of the headlines, there have been any number of analyses that say that if we just keep going to where we're going, led by states, cities, businesses, NGOs, activists, the United States will meet its Paris goals, notwithstanding our national government didn't sign. Now, I suppose there are things that can be undone in the Arctic Refuge and all these other places that would run our emissions back up. But the point is, we have to find a way to make the trend lines, as sexy as the headlines, as important as the headlines, and occasionally a part of the headlines. So far, 14 states and Puerto Rico have joined the U.S. Climate Alliance, pledging to meet the Paris goals. 211 mayors across the country have. Major corporations, including Apple and Walmart, and Rob Walton, thank you for your service here, have said they would stand behind the pledges in the Paris Agreement. The largest solar array in my county, where Hillary and I live, about 20 miles north of here, Westchester County, which also, I'm proud to say, has the highest amount of green space of any urban county in America per capita. Largest solar array belongs to the reinsurance giant Swiss Re. Its American headquarters is about 10 minutes from where we live. And they invited me to the dedication the other day because I've been working with them for more than a decade in literally 12 years ago, they started giving their employees incentives to convert to hybrid or electric cars, to retrofit their homes, to install solar panels before New York had good tax incentives to do so. And they're doing this so they can, first, because they believe in it, and secondly, they need to point to it because they are telling cities and other big units, no reinsurance for you unless you reduce your carbon footprint and have a climate mitigation plan if you're anywhere near the ocean or in a tornado belt in the United States. The trend lines need to be known. Now, maybe I'm just a nerd, but I think that's pretty exciting. And it's not just in the States. We already talked about Iceland and Costa Rica, but China is going to invest $360 billion just through 2020 in clean energy. And they've canceled more than 100 coal-fired power plants. This year, they also, and that's what Sandra said, they pledged to stop processing and selling ivory, which is a big deal. We're going to lose all the big animals on Earth if we don't do a better job of this, and we don't help increase the capacity of vulnerable countries to enforce the laws that some people are willing to give their lives to protect. India has undergone an amazing transformation in a very short time. They think they're going to exceed their Paris commitments. Copenhagen's on its way to becoming the first national capital that's completely carbon neutral in just 8 years. In Germany, Rhein-Hunsrück, the district, is already 100% renewable in electricity and aims to have zero emissions from heat and transportation by 2020. So, you been to Mexico lately? Mexico City used to be unbreathable. It's now, in many places, one of the cleanest cities around. They have all these vertical gardens and lots of other things. We helped them close their biggest landfill. And now, Mexico just announced that it will protect the largest marine reserve in North America. In the Middle East, oil states are not only financing clean energy elsewhere, including in the Caribbean, which still has the world's highest electric rates, with almost all of it coming from heavy imported oil or diesel, but even in the region itself. So that's important. I spend a lot of time with young people who are trying to make a difference through our annual meeting of the Global Initiative for University Students. I've seen college students with no money get a little help to distribute solar cell chargers to replace the use of kerosene in Nicaragua, use drones to monitor poaching and uncontrolled bushfires in North Africa, finance energy retrofits in the United States for more than 1,000 churches, schools, small businesses, and nonprofits, distribute 2-in-1 solar cooker and heater units in remote villages in the Himalayas, just because they knew they could and because they wanted to make a difference. So, no matter how discouraging these headlines are, underneath, we know that what we need to do is achievable, is affordable, in the long run, good economics. And the only question is whether we can do it. There has been a lot of progress in the last several years. Global poverty has gone way down while the production of clean energy has gone way up. The amount of protected land on planet Earth has doubled since 1990 from 8% to 15%. In the United States, the amount of greenhouse gases emissions for each dollar of GDP has been cut by more than half. The percentage of protected ocean has gone from 1 to 6%. We've got to do way better there because it's absorbing too many greenhouse gases. It's becoming too acidic. There's all kinds of problems. But the point is, it's not like we don't know how to do this. Are we doing enough? No. In E.O. Wilson's last volume of his 3-volume trilogy, The Social Conquest of Earth, The Meaning of Human Existence, and the last one came out last year, it's called Half Earth. He says he thinks that the trends are so severe that it is possible that in destroying species at a more rapid rate than at any time in the last 10,000 years, we may be hurt by species destruction before we face the worst of climate change. And that in order to avoid the worst of both, we need to be able to set aside half the planet for vegetation and natural processes. That seems formidable since we're just bragging about going from 8 to 15% in the last 27 years. But if you look at technology, the technology of farming, of transportation, and of building, it is not inconceivable. And doing it could create an enormous amount of employment for people at all educational levels. By reorganizing all of these basic things. So that's what I wanted to say. We all get a choice every day. Everybody in this room, every day, has a choice that most people who ever lived throughout history never had, which is what to do with your waking hours. And we all get discouraged because I just came in from a trip to Arkansas and I'm jet lagged. So when I'm jet lagged, I'm more discouraged, aren't you? So you wake up every morning, it's like you got these little scales inside, you know, and sometimes they're tilted toward hope and sometimes they're tilted like, oh God, we're lost. And you have to make a choice. But I find that I love being around people in every aspect of the environmental movement because by and large, they're wired to do something and to focus on something outside themselves. So we have this incredible luxury. Those of us who've been given more have to do more, but the more other-directed we are, the more likely we are to succeed. I suppose that Hillary and I feel that more often since we became grandparents. But the truth is, this is all fleeting. When the silliest things that are happening in America, in the world today, the most oppressive things, are the result of people actually thinking that power is permanent, that control is a virtue, that the playing field is static, so the only thing that matters is whether you win and somebody else has to lose for you to win. And all of humanity has only been here for the blink of an eye in the history of the universe. And I love the fact that life expectancy is getting longer and all these replacement parts are becoming available. I may not have anything left of me, but heck, even I got a chance to make it a long time. And I'm already the oldest man in my family for 3 generations. It's the blink of an eye. The only thing that can give meaning to your life is what you leave for your children, your grandchildren, and people yet unborn. One of the great blessings of my public life is that I became very close with Nelson Mandela and spent his birthday with him almost every year until he died from the time we were both out of office. And he said that in the bleakest of times in prison and in house arrest, he could always find some peace in the fact that he was allowed to plant a little garden and then he would watch the seed grow. It was sometimes, he said, almost the only thing he could control. But it made him free. Just for a millisecond, he was free. Why? Because he was giving something to the land, and the land was giving something back, and what came back could help someone else. So, yeah, I wish that thing hadn't happened on Grand Staircase Escalante. I love that place. I'm proud of what we did. I wish America were waving the flag in Paris on the climate agreement. But the people are still here. The facts are still what they are. We know what we know. We can do what we can do. Conservation International is more important than ever. Building the capacity of countries who want to do things they can't now do is important. That's one of the 3 pillars of this organization. But there's something we can all do. Your fellow Americans, if you're an American citizen, in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands need you. They haven't gotten near as much help as Haiti did after the earthquake because they came in third in the climate lottery. First, Houston got bashed, then Florida got bashed, and then the hurricanes hit Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and the rest of the Caribbean. There's plenty to do, but we know what to do. We know what the results will be. Do we know if we're doing enough, or if we're getting there fast enough, or we're going to avoid the worst consequences? No, we don't. But that's like me saying we know someday the path of the life of our own sun will lead it to consume the earth, but maybe not for 1,000,000 years or so. And by then, we'll just hop on a little flight and go somewhere else. Don't you want somebody to be here 1,000,000 years from now to make that decision? Since we're under the blue whale in this magnificent place, Hillary and I brought our grandchildren here not very long ago. I'm very proud of this. When I grew up in Arkansas, when more than half the state was covered in timber, when nobody was in my hometown, where it had 35,000 people, still nobody was more than a 10-minute walk from the woods. I don't want future generations to have to learn about this only in a museum. I want to leave them the real thing. You won't get that just getting discouraged. Don't get discouraged. There are more of you than there are of them. Just bear down, be of good cheer, and go out and make something good happen every single day for as long as you're here. Thank you and bless you.